everyone. So my name is Emilie Connors, and just want to say thank you for taking the time to be here today and listen to my presentation. Thank you to Dr. Evans for inviting me to come and talk to you guys about body positivity and body image and how that interacts with one's mental health. I'm really passionate about this, so I'm really excited to get to talk to you all about it. So as Dr. Evans explained, I am in the Jones College of Business, so I'm a marketing major with a concentration in professional selling, and I'll be graduating in just a few weeks. And I based my honors thesis on body image and specifically the body positivity movement. So just by a show of hands, who is familiar with the body positivity movement? Okay, cool, so you guys kind of know what I'm talking about. So yeah, I focused on the impact of social media on body image and more specifically how this impacts mental health. And for the purpose of my research, I kept it specifically on college-aged women, but I do want to clarify that this absolutely affects men as well. Just for the purpose of keeping it concise, I focused on women, but I would love to get to explore how it impacts men in the future, and my recommendations are pretty, applicable to everyone. So. And this is my presentation to Scholars Week in 2023, which was last spring. I wasn't able to present this year because my sister got married that day, so wasn't able to be there, but I did defend my thesis in November with my thesis advisor, Dr. Matthews. She's really incredible, so just want to make sure she gets the credit for helping me throughout this whole process. And just to show you that it is achievable to get to Defense Day, even though sometimes it might feel like it's not. So why did I choose to study body image and its impact on mental health? Up to 90% of college students report that they worry about body image, and so that's a pretty substantial number. I already had a feeling that this was going to be the case just from interacting with friends and peers through college. I could just see the type of issue that this was and the negative impacts that it had on college students. And so because of that number, I really wanted to work to bring that down and think, how can I find a way to raise more awareness about this and find out why is this happening and how can we prevent it from continuing to happen. And so some of the negative implications that come from having issues with your body image, it can trigger disordered eating, anxiety, shame, a variety of mental illnesses that are obviously very difficult to handle. And so this is something that's a really big issue and it's impacting lots of people, as you can see, and so that's kind of what brought me to want to study it specifically. And on the right side, you can see as part of my research, I included the Dove campaign, which focuses specifically on younger girls and how body image is impacting them. And so I just really loved this picture from their campaign. It says, "Face editing removes blemishes, freckles, and confidence." And then it shows half of her face edited versus not. And so they just create a lot of really interesting marketing campaigns like this. So just wanted to include that so you could see sort of what was included in my work. Okay, so body positivity. I know most of you are familiar with the body positivity movement. The purpose of the movement is really to create more awareness on how narrowly defined beauty standards are in today's society, specifically because of the way that women are edited in the media. And so the purpose of this movement is to kind of remove those standards and start to be more realistic in the way that people are editing their photos and just presenting themselves, just because, again, those types of standards are really harmful to women, especially because it can be difficult to know if something is airbrushed, if it's been retouched 10 times. Sometimes you just don't know, and I know even myself, like in high school, I didn't even realize that you could edit pictures like that, and I would just see pictures and be like, wow, they just really look that great, but that's not always the case, so it's important to know that. And again, the movement also is to help counter those pressures, and so to help people overcome the challenges that they have when it comes to, I mean, I'm sure we can all say one time or another, we've been on social media comparing ourselves to someone else, whether it was, it was subconscious or not. It's just something that we do as humans, and so it's important to be mindful of that. And again, this movement is striving to prevent these issues from occurring. As I mentioned earlier, the whole point is to, increase inclusivity, diversity, and empowerment of women so that they can feel represented in these advertisements and comfortable with themselves and ultimately confident. So on the right side, I pulled that photo from Instagram. She is an influencer that focuses specifically on, showing images of herself that are not retouched, aren't edited, and just showing kind of like what normal people look like without, a bunch of retouching and kind of contorting and distorting her body. So I thought that was a really great representation of the movement on social media where it is most widely accessed. And so I wanted to also play this video for you guys. This is something that I include in my research. It's also from the Dove campaign. I just thought it was a really cool video that kind of helps to show what this is all about. So that is the video, and I just thought that was a really good representation of what these companies are trying to achieve. And specifically, Dove does a really fantastic job of it because they focus on young girls and their parents and trying to help prevent these issues before they begin, which is a big issue. A lot of companies are trying to help the situation, but it's kind of like slapping a Band-Aid on a really, really big cut. It just can't heal that way. So it's more important to focus on preventing these issues rather than trying to heal them later when they're a lot more difficult too. And so just thought that was a super cool video that kind of shows, the impact of it, and specifically, the height of the impact of it over COVID. COVID really just made the situation a lot worse. So the struggle for self-confidence here. Social media is a really big part of this issue. And it's actually considered the most influential and pervasive cause of negativity with your body image, of struggling with your body image. And so that was a huge part of my project, was focusing on how social media is tied to this issue and how we can kind of navigate that issue and overcome the challenges associated with it. And so with my research, I sent out a survey to all graduate and undergraduate college women attending Middle Tennessee State. And I found that Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok are the most popular social media platforms for this age group. And with Instagram being the most popular, Snapchat following, and then lastly TikTok. And so that's where a lot of the comparison and struggles sort of come from with looking at the media and the way that women are represented in it. And the role of fashion companies is really important in this as well, because companies have really been targeting young women and really taking advantage of the vulnerability of young girls in order to help make more money, right? So, they'll show you a picture of somebody who looks fantastic in this outfit, and then you start to think, okay, so I'll buy the outfit, I'll look more like her, I might, have better hair, straighter teeth, a better body, whatever you may think. That's kind of how that works. And so it's really important that these companies are aware of the impacts that they're having on these users. And I think it went by for a while where people were kind of not understanding that that was what was happening, but now there's a lot more awareness on it, and we kind of know the strategy that companies are taking here to increase revenue. And so these companies have a really great opportunity to make a lasting impact on women and to sort of prevent these issues from occurring. And so I know a lot of what I've been saying has been a bit negative and talking about how complicated the issue is, but there is a great opportunity here for these companies to do the right thing, which some companies like Dove are doing. So let's talk about who is at risk here. So obviously everybody is at risk for struggling with their body image, but more specifically through my research, I wanted to look at, okay, who is going to be struggling the most with this? What are some of the characteristics of somebody who is more vulnerable than most to have issues with their body image? And I found that with age, it's typically less impactful on you the older you get. So the older you get, the more comfortable you become in yourself, the more confident you are, and really the less you care about what other people think of you, and the less you tend to compare yourself. And so that's something that's really good to know, that this issue isn't something that is forever, and it may feel very heavy at certain times or when you're a certain age, but the older you get, it does improve. And with marriage, I thought this was really interesting. Single individuals are more at risk for struggling with their body image. This does sort of make sense considering, when you are in that partnership, you might not be as worried about what other people are thinking about you. You may not be as worried about attracting a partner. And so that's something also to keep in mind. And then lastly, employment. Unemployed people are also more at risk for this issue. Something that I kind of found through the course of my research is that the busier you are, the less likely you are to be dealing with it as heavily as most people, because it's really just about how much time you have. You probably can feel that yourself on days where you have more time. You might end up on social media more, comparing yourself more, thinking about the way that you're represented online. And so the busier you are, the less time you kind of have to focus on this. And then on the right side, I just included some quotes from my research that I found were really interesting. Social media is arguably one of the greatest factors in the development of self-esteem and body image in modern society. And so this is really important. I think our generation definitely felt this as we were going through middle school and high school, and social media was really popular, and I think in high school is when we really started to be using it all the time. But it's even more of an issue now for younger generations because, as I'm sure you all know, you'll see really, really young kids on Instagram or at an age that's kind of crazy to think about. And so that's something that we really need to take into account. And again, kind of goes along with why I decided to do this. It's an issue that's only becoming more important to talk about and to prevent, just because social media is now so much closer in range and in reach for young people. And its grip is especially tight on young people who are psychologically impressionable, whose bodies are changing, and who value the opinions of their peers. So I want to take you guys back real quick to middle school. I know you don't want to do that. Just kind of think about you at that middle school age and the things you were worrying about and the problems you were having with your friends and the little things that felt, really big at the time. That's why this is so important, because when you're at that age, you do care really heavily about what the people around you think, and you don't really know what's going on. You're changing a lot. You don't know what to expect. You're used to seeing things in magazines and online, and you're like, okay, I'll just look like that one day. That's not always the way it goes, and so it's important to kind of be mindful of this, and that's why it's so important for companies to take this into account and stop taking advantage of that vulnerability. Okay, so the good news. I know I alluded to this earlier, but this struggle is not permanent. So this is something that is very exciting. This research was really fulfilling because although it showed me how problematic this is and how many people are being affected by this, it also showed me how many people are working to stop this from happening, which is really great. And so beauty standards are changing for the better, and companies and models are really taking a stand on the issue to raise more awareness on it and to prevent more young people from, experiencing this challenge in their life, especially at a young age. And so on the right side, that is a campaign that I also included within my research. That's from the brand Aerie, and so in 2014 they released their Aerie Real campaign, where they vowed to stop retouching and editing their photos, which has really made a strong impact on the issue. So wanted to show that. And then also on the right side down there, that is a snippet from Victoria Brown's podcast. She is a former D1 volleyball player, and she has a really interesting podcast that's all about body image and how it impacts women. And she actually had 2 former Victoria's Secret models on there, and it was very interesting because they talked about how unrecognizable they were in their campaigns, and how one of them actually said she stood next to her billboard in New York City and not a single person who walked by recognized her because she looked so different. And even having conversations with her mom, realized her mom didn't even recognize her in the pictures because of the body makeup, glitter, etc., the retouching. It's really, really fascinating and upsetting to know that that happens, but just wanted to put that in there so that you could be aware of that. It's a really interesting podcast she has. You can find the video on YouTube. And it's also really interesting how the issue impacts athletes as well. Something I didn't really take into account for my research, but something that I found is really interesting and notable to keep in mind. So my recommendations: how can we change our behavior to help mitigate the impact that this has on us? Really, you need to be mindful. Be mindful of the content that you're consuming. I know it's really easy to get caught up on social media because of the algorithm. You might look at something once and then the next day your whole feed is about that, or it's about all of the people that you are looking at on TikTok or Instagram. But this is super important because the media that you subscribe to, the algorithm is going to feed you that same type of content continuously. And so if you're following lots of influencers and people who are heavily retouching themselves, care really heavily about the way that they're presented on social media, you might see that start to impact you in a negative way, and you might start to think of yourself in that way and start to criticize yourself and compare. So I would just say there's lots of really great people on Instagram specifically that focus on posting content that's very real and authentic. It can help you kind of feel better, know, okay, not everybody looks like that. There's lots of pictures that people will post of them posed versus not posed, which is very interesting and refreshing to know that, this type of content is really just a highlight reel and it's not authentic. And also I would say the people around you. This one's really important, and I know it's probably the one that's hardest to deal with because they're your friends, right? But it's really important to look really closely at the people that you surround yourself with and look at their behaviors, because the more that they focus on their body image and comment on their bodies and other people's bodies and are just often retouching themselves on social media and editing things, you will likely start to pick up on that behavior and do the same thing or have the same thought process of them of thinking really, really heavily about the way that you look. And so it's hard because a lot of people our age deal with that, but I would just say be mindful and think about that and how it impacts you. And then lastly, your usage. This is something that is probably pretty obvious, but the time that you spend on social media, that just gives you more time to focus on these things and continue to compare. And so I would just say trying to decrease your usage is really good. I know there's a great setting on iPhones where you can actually set a timer, so you can only spend like 15 minutes on Instagram a day or something like that. So I found that to be really useful. And then again, just curating your feed, making sure that you are consuming content that makes you feel good about yourself and that doesn't lead to those negative thought processes and patterns. And then this is just some of the photos I took of displays in Aerie, and it's really interesting just the way that these companies are starting to implement this. For your thesis, I know many of you have already defended, so congratulations if you have. If you are still working towards that defense, I would just say relax first. You're entirely capable. I know it feels like a big task, but I know you'll be able to achieve it, and it's not as big and scary as it seems. Your mentor is so important. Please make sure that you have a good relationship with them. It's really important that you're accountable and prompt, because they're taking the time out to help you with that project, and they're not really getting much in return from it other than helping fulfill your college journey. And so I would just say be really respectful of them and their time. Organize, stay ahead as much as you can, and revise, send it to someone else to revise, then revise it again, then send it to your friend, and then revise it like 20 more times, just so that you feel really good about it, because, revising is the most important step of the process. And then lastly, just want to say thank you. So thank you for listening to this. It was really important to me, and I love getting to spread more knowledge about this, especially on our campus. And I would love to connect with you all, so that QR code is to my LinkedIn. If you're on there, we'd love to connect and stay in touch. But thank you so much.